endless pot of gold. That's what I like to call the taxpayers. That's what we are to some people. All right, let me switch to what we spend the most money on here in the state of Minnesota, and that's education. K through 12 and higher ed and even start and all this, about almost half the money gets spent on education. What's your feelings on the education system in Minnesota? You got kids, as you mentioned. What's your impression of the job they do and how it's working right now?
Well, I think first and foremost, with any business or public entity, regardless if it's an organization, they have costs that are involved. You've got facilities costs, you have supply costs. The biggest expenditure for a business or an entity is the labor cost. And so I think what you see in this situation is you see an ever-increasing presence and control by Education Minnesota. My opponent is a former president of Education Minnesota, from what I understand. That's what I've been told.
And the Robbinsdale Federation of Teachers.
That's right.
Also.
And anytime an organization places the importance or the onus, if you will, of the organization on creating something for the teachers or something for the administrators, they lose sight of what's really important, which is the education of our children. And so, the school district does not exist so that it can provide jobs for teachers. It does not exist so that it can provide jobs for administrators or school district personnel. The school system exists so that it can provide our children with an education. And I think that a lot of people lose sight of that. A lot of people don't remember that that's the reason why it's there. Now, as a side effect, we want to hire and employ good teachers, good administrators, and people who know how to educate our children. Of course, that's going to be a secondary thing that comes from that, but that's not the focus. It's not what we should be focusing on. What we should be focusing on is how to make our children's education better. And I think that, there's a reason that private education and private schools do so much better than our public schools do. I think that competition in any industry is, healthy competition is something that we derive success from. And so any private school that a parent chose to put their money into and send their children to that wasn't making the grade or that was having some of the issues that our public schools are, you can bet those parents would take their children out of that school and move them somewhere else, and that school wouldn't be in business for very long because their focus is providing that quality education for the students. And so I think that to a certain degree, our public school systems have lost that initiative. They've lost that incentivization to provide a better education for our students because they know that regardless of whether they make the grade or not, they're still going to get public funding year in and year out. And so, you talk about issues like alternative teacher licensure. You talk about, we're short on math and science teachers in our district and all across the United States of America. What we need to be focusing on is getting in to our system those good teachers that have bright futures and understand what it means to work with children and really are excited about working with children. And a lot of the times you see when union involvement is involved, they'll protect those teachers that have been around for 30 and more years, and the first ones that are laid off when you see declining enrollment in a district are a lot of times those really, really bright and excited teachers that
ones
just
without
enter.
tenure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times those teachers, what they lack in experience, they certainly make up for in excitement, and they go to work every day excited to see their students, and their students like them. I think by and large, we need to look at a merit-based system as opposed to a tenure-based system. And I know that there's been some movement in those areas, but make no mistake, the teachers union still has a stranglehold on our schools in Minnesota.
Yeah, so the ideas of, and I've been saying that on this show for 2 years. I've been just screaming that for the past 2 years. So when we talk about more competition, would that include more charter schools, for example? Would that include maybe tuition tax credits or something along those lines? Are you open to those options for
Absolutely.
people?
I think the more choices that you can have in this situation, the better. I think the idea of a tuition tax credit is an excellent idea. I think that regardless of whether you're talking about schools or you're talking about industry or you're talking about private investiture, that people in Minnesota know how to spend their money a lot better than the government does. And so if you give them that money that they use to educate our children, and you let a parent decide where they're going to send their child and how they're going to tailor an education for their child, I think they'll do a much better job than our government does. And I think that works in every situation, every scenario. I'm a big fan of leaving the dollar in the pocket of the taxpayer as opposed to taking that dollar, because I know that on average 80 cents of that dollar will always go toward what it's supposed to go toward if it's left in the taxpayer's pocket, as opposed to less than 35 cents when you take it for the government.
And you know, it's funny, the same people who talk about tax credits for what kind of car you buy, tax credits for green energy and all that stuff, when it comes to tax credits for education, all of a sudden, whoa, we can't have that all of a sudden. Let me move on to some other issues facing Minnesota. Viking Stadium is something that, we had the Twin Stadium, we had the Gopher Stadium. The Vikings lease runs, I think, 2 or 3 more seasons, including this one coming up. What is your take, first off, what is your take on tax-funded stadiums, generally speaking? And what is your take on a future Viking Stadium with some taxpayer money?
Wow, that's a loaded question.
Of course, that's my job, folks. I'm not Larry King, okay?
I'm not getting any softball questions on the stadium issue, that's for sure. Here's the thing. I'm not in favor of using public funds to support building a new stadium. What I am in favor of doing is offering a revenue bonding bill, basically, which states that, hey, we're going to put a $4 or $5 surcharge per ticket for stadium seats, and so that would apply to season ticketing, that would apply to any people that came in after the fact and bought tickets. And what that will do is that will help pay off that stadium based on the money that's paid by people to go and watch the game. Otherwise, if you use money out of the general fund to help build a stadium, what you're having is you're having people in Pequot Lakes, you're having people in International Falls, you're having people in other parts of the state that don't have an opportunity to get into the Twin Cities as much. They don't have an opportunity to see, the benefits of those tax dollars spent. And not everyone is a football fan. It's kind of a crazy thing to me, because I'm definitely a football fan. But I can honestly tell you, being a football fan, I wouldn't mind paying an extra $4 or $5 for a ticket in order to go see a game if I knew that we were doing a much more responsible thing by funding the stadium through an effort like that, as opposed to taking money out of the general fund. Look, folks, we don't need to find new ways to spend more money. As much as we love the Vikings here, that's not the right answer. We need to find a way to fund things such as a stadium initiative through different methods and different ways that are more responsible to our taxpayers out there.
Yeah, just a side note on that. I saw Mike Opad was sitting in the Twins booth the other day talking about how now the sales tax in Hennepin County that was supposed to go to the Twin Stadium is now being used to keep libraries open on Sundays. It's so nice, Mr. Opad, that you BS'd us through that tax.